invented my own kind of grass, too. Did you know that? Look at this. This is registered. Carl Spackler Bent.
Oh, yeah. I've felt grass like this before. I've played on this.
This is a hybrid. This is a cross. Bluegrass, Kentucky bluegrass, featherbed bent, and Northern California sensimilla. The amazing stuff about this is that you can play 36 holes on it in the afternoon, take it home and just get stoned to the bejesus belt that night on the stuff.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another week of Muskies on Tap. I'm one of your hosts here tonight, Gus Manty. We got a few of us in the Mott crew playing a little injured here. As you maybe can hear from my voice, I don't know how much of it's coming through the mic, but really not a lot. I'm under the weather again this winter. Fellow member here, Max, is as well, and actually even our guest. So before we get into any introductions, I'd like to apologize for the lateness of this podcast. The recording was delayed because of us being sick. It would have been a nightmare if we had to record when all of our voices were pretty bad. So we're all here on the mend and we're feeling better. And we're excited to bring you this podcast here with Owen Seman from Big O's Bucktails and the Muskie Hunks podcast.
Shout out
to Owen. So before we get any further, let's introduce the others here on tonight. We got none other than Max Menti. How are you doing tonight, Max?
I'm on the mend, feeling a little under the weather still. Just going to battle this one out here tonight. Excited to be with you guys. Looking forward to talking with Big O himself. And obviously, very excited to see our buddy Brian over there, his shining face. Brian, as the one healthy member of this podcast committee here tonight, how are you doing?
I'm holding up a little bit better than you guys, I think. I don't know where Gus keeps catching these germs. There's nobody in Eagle River right now. They don't have snow, so you don't have the snowmobile traffic. I don't know what you're doing late at night, Gus. Get
Them city folk. Nah, it's them city folk coming back up north, man. Freaking when Max came up there with some peeps, he brought some germs, and
we'll blame it on the Chicagans.
Yeah, that's what I'll do. The Chicagans, the minis. Well, I'm here tapping in for my drink of the night with some Body Armor Light.
Oh, I was gonna say, I thought you had a beer. I was like,
yeah,
don't quit.
So I brought this up because if I wasn't under the weather, I'd be having a good old amber beer that I got from the Road Rules that buddy Kyle gave me from District 1 Brewing. I think it was called the Goal Caulfield. Amber.
That's clever.
From Stevens Point.
Nice.
Shout out Cole.
Yeah, I'm drinking a throat coat tea tonight, so we got Muskies on tea coming.
What was that?
Coming from you guys?
So you got Muskies on tea and Muskies on electrolytes. Brian, what you got?
I got the Aquafina pure water, perfect taste.
You would be an Aquafina guy, huh?
This is the softest podcast intro of all time. Let's get into some musky talk here, because Gus, you just got done with your first ever seminar with the Road Rules event Greg Thomas put on down there in Mosinee. Give us a little recap. How'd it go? Were you having any pregame butterflies prior to getting up there and doing some public speaking, or did it go smoothly?
I did a little bit. First off, big shout out to Greg Thomas putting on that event.
Shout out.
GT. That was GT. Really excited to have the opportunity to go and speak there. And it was a great crowd, great group of people there. Everyone was really friendly, so that made it a lot easier, to speak at.
No hecklers in the crowd.
No, I didn't have. If there was a heckler, it'd probably be Greg himself. So But,
I was gonna send you the old SpongeBob meme of, oh brother, this guy
Ooh, this guy
stinks.
stinks. Yeah. No, I didn't. I wasn't sweating that would happen. I had at least, confidence I could pull through and put something together. But once I started getting past like the intro slide, I felt pretty comfortable. They dimmed the front half of the room lights, so it's not like there's some giant spotlight blinding me that would have made it a little bit more more difficult.
Sure.
But I don't know. I got through it. I felt like it went really well. I think it resonated with some people, and I got to talk to some people afterwards, and that was really cool. They came up and said I did a nice job, which was really, really, really nice of them. And met some great people, and some people that gave a couple shout outs to the pod that they've been listening, or there's a few people that were like, oh, that's sweet,
So,
I'll go check that out. Gave some people some stickers. So I thought it was a great event. Shout out to the Sportsman's Repair Shop there in Mosinee for hosting it as well.
sure.
So yeah, it was a great time. I got to see Nate Asfar as well, and Michael Hansen, and yeah, it was a good time. Great talks that day.
Was it a live Q&A after?
It's a pretty laid back event. It wasn't like a Q&A. It's just like
Yeah.
when each person was done, it was like, you got any questions, and then they would just kind of bounce around the room, and people would maybe go back to say, you want to talk about this slide again, or I got a question about this part of your talk. I got a question about this bait. It was pretty
Do you have
open-ended.
any parts of your talk that a couple people had questions on or that sparked interest?
Well, my talk was on specific baits, and there was definitely a couple, things that I chatted about that people had a little bit more interest on. I obviously don't want to give too much away because, gave out the info to the people that, wanted to make it out to the show and support the Road Rules event and stuff like that. But no, people definitely showed some interest, so that was pretty awesome. I mean, the one funny thing was Greg was asking me when I wanted to go on, and I'm like, just like the later the better. I don't want to be like first or anything. And then Nate was first in the morning. I got there like 10 minutes before he started, and I'm like, I'll go later. And then Greg's like, okay, I'll go after Nate. Then like more than halfway through Nate's presentation, Greg pulls me aside and goes, hey, I got technical difficulties. You're next. Like in like 20 minutes. I'm like, oh, okay. I get the before lunch crowd then. So I was hoping to get the post lunch crowd, but
It's
no,
good
it
that
worked
it
out.
sounded like it was a success. Nice job doing that. Who'd have thunk, that you'd be doing some public speaking engagements, talking on a podcast a year and a half ago.
I don't know, man. That's crazy. It
Yeah,
was
it's awesome.
oh yeah, it was all because of your spark, Max. You said, let's start a podcast. And you asked me, what's the logistics? Can we do that? And I'm like, I think so. I think we can.
Maybe.
Well,
I
I
don't
just
know.
remember how nervous you were to go on the guide panel on that Backlash had on, not too long ago. So it's
Yeah,
cool to see the
like,
progression.
yeah, seriously. I think not trying to point that episode out again, because I maybe had a couple good points once I warmed up in that podcast, but I think my intro or one of the first questions I answered actually pretty poorly. And after I re-listened to it, I was like, oh my God, I had so much more to talk about there, but I just shriveled up and completely blanked and then just handed the mic to the next person. Like,
Live
it's
and you
basically
learn.
like it like probably sounded like Jeff cut something out of there. No, that was literally me just pretty much stopping mid thought and giving the mic to the next person. So I've come a long way. Come a
Yeah,
long
Scott,
way.
there's always growing pains. Well, hey, speaking of things that are continuing to come along here, we got some hats that are cooking here. What's going on with those?
I just got I just got an email that the hats are en route. I got a tracking number, and they should be here before this weekend, probably about by the time
Ooh.
this podcast comes out, which is going to be a day late, I assume. Just based on recording being like a day or two later than typical recording nights. So that'll give me plenty of time to sort through them, take really cool pictures, put them out to the pub before we head to the first show in Milwaukee, where my buddy Clayton and I are going to be driving down there, and we're going to be there the whole weekend. And then also, other than just us two, our other good friend Pete Blickards is going to be in a guide panel Q&A thing on Saturday morning, I believe. I can't remember the time. I might have said it in the last podcast, like 10:30 or 11:30. It's going to be us three on just kind of chatting up on Q&A with people, just like a Northwoods guide panel. So looking forward to that as well. That's coming up shortly. That's mid February here. That's got to be, what's that going to be? 16th, 17th, 18th is the Milwaukee show.
Awesome. Well, all good stuff. Looking forward to all that. But I think for now, let's dive into this interview with Owen, and hope you guys enjoy.
All right, everybody, on the line here tonight, we got Owen Seman with Big O's Bucktails out east in Pennsylvania. So, Owen, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on. And I'll go ahead and apologize in advance. I know we're all kind of playing sick here tonight. I'm under the weather. It sounds like a couple of you guys are under the weather, so we'll do our best to get something in here. But I've really been looking forward to talking to you guys. And thanks for having me on. I don't think I've ever been a guest on anything, so I'll definitely remember it.
That's awesome. Yeah, we all got a little bit of an MJ flu game going on here tonight, so we're thankful you're able to make it. I'm glad to finally get you on here. You guys were nice enough to give us some shine on your podcast, the Hunks, Muskie Hunks, which we'll chat about later on. But yeah, really looking forward to chatting with you here tonight. So I want to start off with some of the bucktail stuff, because I don't know if you know this, but your spinnerbait is actually responsible for Gus's personal best pike, northern pike, and what would have been my personal best muskie had I just done a better job at setting the hook. So
I did, believe me. I listened to the podcast, and I, my heart is broken, especially with losing that fish in tournament time like that. But just to have my baits in play, and we'll kind of talk about that a little bit here. But that's really just why you do it. I mean, making bucktails and making spinnerbaits isn't, it's not the craftsmanship that some of these crankbaits and things like that are. It's really just trying to make the best tool. They're not the most beautiful things. You're not getting these crazy paint jobs. It's just really trying to make the best tool for whatever it is you're trying to fish. And those spinner baits can be fished in a bunch of different ways. My bucktails can be fished in a bunch of different ways. So that's really what I try to do, is kind of offer something a little bit different, maybe custom, because you're never going to reinvent the wheel with a bucktail, in the sense that a double-bladed bucktail, you can put different staggers, you can do just about all kinds of different stuff, but it's still a bucktail, And
right.
So it is kind of trying to find what little differences can you make to try to get your bait to stand out.
Well, what got you, I guess what got it started then for you when you decided, all right, I'm just going to start building these? Has it been recent, or was there anything that really made you want to try it out?
I got musky fever in 2017. I was essentially, at that point in time, my kids were young. I mean, I had like a 5, a 3, and a 1-year-old. Like, work was crazy. Like, I guess in a lot of ways I was looking for a new outlet, because I had been a big golfer, and golf was my huge outlet for me. And that kind of fizzled out with family. And then muskie fishing, I caught a 54-inch muskie in 2017 when I was on Lake Nipissing. And that kind of, obviously, like, it changes something in you. Not to mention the fact that, like, I was in a weird place in my life with, like, career change, young kids. Like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it was a bit of a midlife crisis I was going through, and musky fishing filled a void very quickly that, I was important to me, and making bucktails was just another extension of that. It was like kind of like, okay, I can't fish during the winter, you know, I can only watch so many YouTube videos, um, and it was like, what else can I do to kind of get myself involved in it? And it was like, all right, bucktails look like something I could probably, figure out. You watch a bunch of videos, you buy a bunch of stuff, and you can figure out how to make bucktails. Like, I know you guys make bucktails. It's like, it's
Mhm.
not, it ain't brain surgery. If you have all the components and you have the know-how, really anyone out there can make a bucktail. So as a guy that makes bucktails, it's, I don't know, I feel like some guys like really make it out like it's a bigger deal than it is. Uh, we're not, these
Right.
aren't like state of the art items. I mean, it's a bunch of quality components that are most likely bought from, hopefully places in the United States. Most of the components we get, luckily, we do get from the United States. Mine, I have there's a company in Wisconsin
Oh,
that
nice.
is does most of the lure components. But again, it's like you buy these components and you put them together. That's what a bucktail is.
And you got some sweet decals on yours though too. I mean, I think that was the one thing that stood out to me when you had sent over a few of yours outside of like some of the really cool, unique color combinations. And I think just the size of the spinnerbait was something that we really liked. The weight of it. I mean, I think we'll kind of get into that with how you're fishing them, but those decals you put on your baits are pretty cool. If you want to touch on that.
Yeah, I mean that just kind of that goes from my logo, in which you know hap everyone makes fun of me for using the term organic on the podcast, but it all kind of happened organically in the sense that I didn't have a logo or anything, and I'm making bucktails, and I have a buddy that paints, and he loves to paint, and he loves to fish, and he's the one that made the original painting that I have hung in my office. That
Cool.
is basically just the one single fish in kind of a stained glass um, pattern. And
Sure.
then I sent that to another design company in Pittsburgh, Commonwealth Press, and they took that painting and made the logo itself. And then I love the so much. I was like, listen, what can you put on a blade to give some type of contrast? I mean, because that's really what that blade is spinning so fast. I've painted a bunch of blades and I'm not really super into that. I've gotten more into just the solid color blades with the big decal that that really stands out.
Yeah. Gus, what did you notice about the spinner bait though, that when we got it? I remember we kind of were talking about them like, "Oh, I'm excited to fish these." They just felt like a lot more heavy duty than spinner baits we've had in
Yeah.
the past. Like, not to shit on other spinner baits by any means, they all work, but like some of them kind of feel like maybe a little bit lighter, like heavy, like kind of glorified bass baits. And when like I grabbed your spinner bait, I was like, "Oh, this is a musky spinner bait. Like this thing
Yeah.
feels, beefy."
I mean, you're
So what
spot on there.
I forget what I sent you. I know I sent you a couple 3 ounces. Those are
Oh,
the ones that are like the beefy ones.
Yeah.
that's the one
Um,
that those are the ones that we use in Vermilion. And I think you sent two 1.5 ounces, which are still pretty hefty because 1.5 on the smaller blades, it can get down pretty deep. And that's what I was gonna say. Like I really like the difference there because I don't own a ton of spinner baits, and to be honest, I probably underutilized the whole category itself. And what I found is that yours can stay deep and go quick, where most of the spinner baits that I've used, they just ride so high. I've actually had sometimes clients will throw them out and they start reeling it too fast and they start boiling on the surface or blowing out of the water, and that's not what you want. So what was the old idea on making them, extra heavy, maybe to like troll as well, or just
it
be
comes from the
beefed up?
Canadian guys.
The Canadian guys.
Absolutely. I mean, that's where I was introduced to spinnerbait trolling. Those guys they've been doing it for years, and I really think that the spinnerbait spinnerbaits in general for musky fishing is an underutilized category in the States by guys in the States. I don't know about, out in the Midwest. I know here it is, I would say super underutilized.
It is
But
for sure.
in Canada, there are guys that's like all they'll fish. I mean, that's, if when they go out, they are casting them, they are trolling them, and they're putting gigantic fish in the net every single year. So it's kind of like, well, what is it about that? And you're trying to mess with the weighting, you mess with different blades, and you really just kind of try to find what works for you. And what I've found is the 3 ounce for both casting and trolling, and the 1.5. If you really just want to cast it, because casting the 3 ounces can be tough. That's not.
Mhm.
They're not the easiest.
It was tough
things.
to burn. Yeah, we were burning them over pretty shallow water, and we needed what we need to use 10. What we would normally throw in like double 10 plus size blades to burn.
But
they
then
weren't.
I'm currently building up a couple of 5 ouncers for guys up in Canada that are fishing, like the heavy current, and they need these things to stay down. And it's just a totally different type of fishing than I hear many people doing here.
Oh God. Sorry. I was just gonna ask you if you're cooking up anything secret in the kitchen there for this upcoming year. I see a bunch of baits behind you on the wall. Are you trying to create your own new blade ramification, or
No,
what do
you
you
know
got?
what? Again, it's kind of looking at what else is working in the industry, and again, you're not trying to reinvent the wheel. I figured out adding on that like what I'm calling a bonsai blade, which is you've seen Dadson's blade with it with no name, which again, the Canadian guys they market stuff like you can't get it, and which I get, I guess in a sense you can't buy a Dadson blade with no name, but I can go in my basement and make one. Like I'll figure if it takes me 100 different tries. That's the thing about having components is even if it takes me 100 different tries, I can figure it out. Where someone, if you don't have that, if you don't have all the components, but I can go figure out how to make anything. It's like, and that's what, and you figure out how to make it a little different. I'm using a much smaller blade. And again, all my bucktails, I use flexible wire instead of a hard wire, which I don't know of anyone else that's doing that exclusively. I know other companies have done it. Again, it's just the combination of things that I've found that I like that work, and like that's what I like to put out there. I'm not trying to put out a spanky bait, and I'm not trying to put out an IC9. Like that's not the intention. It's to put out something that's a little bit different. Maybe it's something that'll work, maybe not.
So you're pretty crafty with your own bucktails and spinner baits, and we've talked about this in a couple other pods with modding up some other baits and different bait categories. Have you gotten bored this winter at all and tried to mod a different bait with blade or whatever it might be?
Not really. Because I spend so much time especially during show season, it's like a mad rush. I feel like I've been burning the candle at both ends between work, kids, and building bucktails and spinner baits. And, when you're trying to get ready for a show, you got to worry about everything else. You got to worry about your display. You got to worry about transporting all your shit from Pittsburgh to Chautauqua, New York. You got to worry about, making sure you have everything that you need, because once you're up there, you're screwed. So you really spend a lot of time behind the scenes making like zipping it all up. And so no, I haven't really had too much time to mess with other stuff. I like to, but that's more during the summer when I'm fishing. I will, because I'd like to modify stuff while I'm out there on the water.
I agree.
So you're talking about obviously you had your hands full lately with this show. Excited to hear about that. So last weekend, if I'm correct, was the Muskie Max show. It was in Chautauqua, New York.
No,
And-
Muskie Max is coming up.
So, sorry.
Yeah,
which one were you just at?
This was the New York Muskie Expo that was in Chautauqua, New York. And then we have Muskie Max coming up March, I think, what is it, 2nd and 3rd?
2nd, 3rd, yeah.
Yeah, and that's here in Pittsburgh, just south of Pittsburgh in Washington, PA.
My fault.
But yeah,
was that your first
this one
show?
up in Chautauqua was really cool.
Yeah, was that your first time having a full display and everything?
No, I've my first full display was 2020 Muskie Max, which
Cool.
was literally like the weekend before the world shut down. It was March
Yeah.
7th and 8th of 2020. And so after that, and we, there were no shows for, I guess my next show after that was just Muskie Max of 2022, whatever it is,
Sure.
2 years
Skip
later.
the
So
year, yeah.
I'm not a once you do it a couple times, you get kind of used to it.
Mhm.
But it's pretty cool, man. The shine hasn't worn off being a vendor yet, where I
I
think
bet.
it has for a lot of vendors that have been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, I
Dude,
mean, you're a small batch maker, and that's kind of cool that you get to go out there and show off your stuff and get to meet some new people and introduce some new people to your baits. I mean, it's awesome.
And you know what's cool is that the New York, because where Chautauqua is located, it's only a couple hours for Canadian guys to come down. So we had a bunch of awesome Canadian vendors come down. We had a bunch of guys come down, just come down to buy, just as consumers. So it was cool to kind of bring that aspect in because, the Canadian guys aren't going to come all the way to Pittsburgh for Muskie Max. That's a 7-8 hour drive as opposed to maybe a 2.5 3 hour drive down to just outside of Buffalo. So it's cool to get your baits in front of other people, and that's really what it's all about.
nice. Is the New York, is that kind of a mixed show of small and large vendors there, or how would you compare that to some other shows you've been to?
It's there's a couple of large vendors. There's Chaos has an awesome booth, and also the big one is the St. Lawrence Muskie Shop, which like they bring down like their whole freaking shop,
Hmm.
because they don't sell just one type of bait. Like they're a general merchandiser, so you can buy just about anything in their booth, from crazy Canadian makers to stuff that you just can't walk into other booths. But aside from that, it really is a lot of basement bait makers, man. I mean, my booth was just surrounded with guys that do this just for fun, like me.
That's cool.
Were you standing around your booth pretty much like the whole time, or did you get to walk around at all, or
Oh, you
find
get to you
time?
get to walk around because
Okay.
I had enough help. I had my wife and kids were there.
Oh, nice.
My Nate from the podcast, him and his family
Mhm.
came up, and like a couple of the other hunks are always around. So there's enough help. And people, what's cool about it is with the hunks podcast, it's there's a lot of people that come up and just want to kind of shoot the shit with us, and so the booth gets busy for that reason too, which is
Hmm.
cool, man. It's kind of surprising the type of reaction you get when you get out there in public. You don't realize when you're sitting here behind a microphone just talking to your buddies how many people are really out there listening to it and paying attention.
Yeah, and that's something I was super excited to talk with you about tonight. I mean, obviously you're a man that wears many hats. You're on top of being just a musky angler and bait maker. You're a dad, husband, attorney, and now all of a sudden you got this podcast that's thrown into the mix that you guys started. A few years back, and how did that all like kick up and get going? I mean, I've
You
kind of
know,
heard a little bit on your podcast, but it's always nice to kind of hear the origin story from you.
it's a great question because it really happened just the way that everyone says, oh, musky fishing's a little different. Like guys in musky fishing are a little bit different. Well, when I got musky fever in 2017, obviously I start looking for every resource I can find. And
Mhm.
locally, you know, you start Googling and what comes up? Oh, Muskie's Inc. We have a Muskie's Inc. chapter here. So I decided to join Muskie's Inc. and went to a meeting. And sure enough, you met a couple of guys. One of the guys I met just talked to just for like 1 second was Ryan Reed from the pot, that's
Mhm.
become, one of my best friends now. And, it just kind of went from there. And, I meet guys through Muskie's Inc. and then we get a text chain going, and like we're all out fishing on the weekends, we're all fishing different waters. And our text chain becomes really interesting because everyone's fishing differently. Everyone, like, no one's fishing together. Like it's not like we're, like you guys have been fishing together your entire lives, I assume, right?
Yes. Yep.
Like none of us fish together at all. Like we met through Muskies Inc. and a couple fished a little bit, together. But for the most part, we were just guys that kind of had this weird hobby that we wanted to talk about, and we thought our text messages were kind of interesting because we all fished a lot differently. We all kind of came into the sport differently, and we were like, what the hell? If no one listens, no one listens.
Well, who was the first person to drop that message though in the group chat that said, "Hey, should we turn this into a podcast?"
I don't know. I really don't know.
Really?
But we kind of tossed it around a little bit, and I really don't know. I'd have to ask the other guys how that happened because
that's quite the step, from going from a fun group chat to all of a sudden like, hey, let's actually put this out for other people to listen to and see if we get some nibbles,
Well, part of it is that Ryan Reed has his a YouTube channel that he doesn't focus on all that much anymore. He should, but I mean he had quite a following, and that kind of got him a voice, so to speak, in the muskie industry. He started kind of helping out with Muskie Max, which was our local giant muskie expo, which is awesome, by the way. You guys really should think about coming in for it sometime. And so Ryan was kind of the first to get his foot in the door with with any voice in the industry. I had my booth at Muskie Max. We were kind of like, all right, let's kind of see where this goes. And again, like it could have ended 3 weeks into it, and it wouldn't have surprised me one bit,
Right. We felt the same way. And so when you guys started out though, I mean, was I guess has kind of the episodes evolved or changed in any way from when you guys started out? Like did the goal or the mission of the podcast, has it changed at all? When you guys started out, was it just, hey, we're gonna shoot the shit about muskie fishing in general, and then did the interviews kind of start happening later on, or was it early on, hey, well, let's get some other people on, I guess how did it all go down?
I think we kind of first wanted to see what the reaction was to, whether anyone was even paying attention to anything. Some of our earlier guests I thought were pretty interesting and kind of off the beaten path, in the sense like we had Brad, who's a 3D printer. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the last name right now, but he just does awesome 3D printing. It was just a really interesting episode on making musky baits with a 3D printer. We also had Camden Glade on from he's from Minnesota, works for the DNR. He was the one that was doing the musky regurgitation study.
Guy.
And people were listening to this stuff. So it was kind of like, all right, maybe people were kind of liking the that we just bullshit, but if you add someone in there that might have a little bit more knowledge along with the bullshit, it can be kind of interesting,
Yeah, I don't even remember where I first heard the podcast, but like for you guys doing like the long format muskie podcast was like my dream, because I live in Minneapolis, and I've told this multiple times here, but I'm driving to Eagle River, most weekends in the summer, or if I'm driving for work or whatever. I mean, it's a 4.5 hour car ride. So like to be able to dive into a 2.5 hour, 3 hour podcast was awesome, because it was just like the perfect way to shut the brain off and just listen to muskie, hoopla for a while. It was great.
I'm the same way. Not just muskie podcast, but I audiobooks constantly, everything. But yeah, I agree. And I can't tell you how many people came up to us at the New York show and said things like, they love it because on Monday morning they can put it on, and it's like they're sitting around the fire with their buddies, just shooting the shit. And that's pretty cool. We don't claim to be imparting much knowledge at all. Hopefully our guests are the ones that are there to impart the knowledge. Which is why you guys bring a totally different aspect, because you guys have the actual fishing acumen first and foremost. And you guys are young. The idea, you guys fishing the PMTT is, I love that aspect of this whole podcast. So, I think everyone's got to find where they fit and I think the hunks have kind of found a little niche. You either if you dig us, cool. If not, that's cool too. We don't have to be for everybody.
No, I mean that's kind of like how we, when we started out, was talking with these guys, and like it was kind of a similar premise where, we have our group chats, or we had our, kind of group calls post musky outings, and all of a sudden the next thing you know, we're dialing up a logo and trying to explore the
Yeah.
podcast game, and it was kind of weird waters at first. And honestly, one of our biggest like moments where we were like, oh, maybe this is actually catching some attention or garnering some steam was honestly when you guys were like, hey, do you want to come on ours and chat? And we thought that was like the coolest freaking thing. We're like, holy shit, this is awesome. We get to go on and talk about this. So that was really nice of you guys to do that. It was awesome.
I think that's kind of where we want to be different than other podcasts in the sense that, when we started, nobody invited us on to pump up the hunks. You know what I mean? Like, and that's nobody needed. You know what I mean? I shouldn't put it that way. No one owed us anything. You know what I mean? But I thought that I really enjoyed what you guys were doing, so I was like, you know what? Let's give these guys a little bit of a boost, whether it helps or not, because I don't know whether the hunks is a boost or not.
It definitely
jury's
was.
still out.
We got some East Coast folks that, hit us up on our Instagram or whatever. And it's like, there's no way they would have found us without the Hunks episode. I mean, so that definitely had some reach.
Oh, that's awesome. And we've tried to have Midwest guys on from the beginning because there's such a big Midwest muskie following. And, how can you have a podcast and talk to muskie guys without talking to Midwest guys? We've tried to talk to, people from everywhere, trying not to just be hyper local. And, for what it's worth, I think we've done a decent job of that. We've had Canadian guys on, we've had Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, you name it. We've had them on.
Yeah. No, I agree. The Midwest definitely, sometimes it feels like it's kind of the heart of muskie country. And then, but in the same time, like when I start listening to podcasts like, your guys's, and you kind of expand your reach a little bit, you realize there's these like awesome muskie hubs in other parts of the country that you just never really, being in Wisconsin, you're just kind of not tuned out of a little bit. And it's been really sweet to kind of learn more about the muskie range just as a whole. I mean,
and that's actually why we try to, we do this, we try to do these hunks weekend things where we invite people in, because, it's cool to fish, different waters, and, Pennsylvania, we have an open season, so you can fish it year round. I know people in Wisconsin, Minnesota, they're typically, dying to get out and fish. Like last year we had the Guru out.
Shout out.
And shout out Guru.
Shout out.
And we had the Baddock boys out last year, from down in Indiana. And, it's creating those kind of contacts in fishing with people and bringing people in to expose them to the East, really, because there is some unbelievable muskie fishing here. And some of our local waters are just in an absolute prime. There were more 50s caught out of Pymatooning Reservoir here this year than we've seen in years. So there's a lot of good fishing to be had, and if anyone wants to, if you want to fish it early in the season, you can always come in and do that here in PA.
Well, let's dive into that then. In your region and for you this last year, what were some of the best fish stories, biggest fish? How'd you do?
Well, let me say, I'm not the guy to talk about, many, tons of fish, because I don't catch a ton of fish. I think I caught 5 last year, in my limited, but the most memorable one was the one I got a 45 and a half at our Hunk Spring Fling. And it was one of the coolest eats I've ever had. Boat side fish did exactly what it was, like a textbook, fish did exactly what I wanted it to do. I'm using that top line twitch that I was like in love with. This fish follows it in, and I say, fish, fish, fish. I make one flick of the wrist, like away from the boat with the bait, and that muskie accelerates and eats that thing in a heartbeat. And it was just one of those things like, you know what? This is right here in Pennsylvania. Like that wasn't, I didn't have to go to Canada for that. I didn't, that was literally an hour away from, 2 hours away from my house. So it's kind of like it reminds you that, hey, listen, there are good fish here locally and it can happen here.
I remember from when we were on your guys' pod, you talked a ton about trolling. That's a huge thing out by you. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that primarily what you do when you go out, or what kind of
I
ways are you
don't.
targeting?
Personally, I'm a caster. I'm not even and that's kind of where the beauty of the podcast is like so many guys on the podcast fish differently. Like Ryan and Donnie,
They're the
they will,
trollers, right?
yeah, they're mainly trolling. Nick trolls a lot, and I don't even want to say mainly trollers because everyone does cast, but sophisticated trolling, like we're talking guys that know what they're doing, that's not me because in PA we can run 3 rods a person. So
Mhm.
you got planer boards out there. You got I don't even have planer boards. Hopefully that's something this year that I hope to get out there. But when I have limited time, it's kind of like I want to I'm if I have 2 hours to go fish, I'm gonna go cast.
Mhm.
I so rarely
Yeah.
have I mean, I very rarely have a full day to go fish. When I do, that's when I go to Canada. My full days of fishing are in Canada, and up there you can only troll 1 rod per person, so it's not nearly as complex. So, I'm not. I guess the answer is like no. I'm not the sophisticated troller that the other guys are. I hope to learn. Like I said, I'm a good learner. I think expert learner.
Yeah, I think with the whole trolling thing, actually, that's I think one why I gravitated towards your guys' podcast quite a bit in the beginning. Because if I remember, I want to say I listened, if not from the beginning, pretty close, and listened back and started there. And I remember a lot of there was even a few podcasts I don't think you had guests on, and it was just you guys, the hunks, and it was always the back and forth banter of the quote unquote non-trollers with the trollers. But I was always enjoying that because I'm out of the, I've been trying to get into trolling around here. It's still not a big thing in Wisconsin. It
Okay,
just became legal again not too long ago. And
so what is the state of trolling there? I mean, because I'll tell you right now, when people come to Muskie Max to buy baits, I
mhm.
would say that 75% are coming to buy almost exclusively trolling baits
Oh wow, that's more
because
than I
there's
would
so
think.
much trolling of these like of shad-based reservoirs locally in Ohio and PA and
Hmm.
even in West Virginia. So trolling is a much bigger thing here than casting. Like you don't get a ton of people that are looking to go out and fire bucktails around. You really don't. That's
Hmm.
much more of a Canadian thing, or maybe a Wisconsin thing. Maybe you guys do it in Minnesota, but around here, you just don't. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
it's definitely more
bucktails are.
trolling oriented.
Yeah, I didn't really understand that either when I went to Cave Run for the first time. I know it was like, people were giving me the rundown on like what the water temps to expect. Maybe they're going to be about post spawn, and then thinking about that up here, be like, okay, I should probably bring like a MEPS #5 or a single blade bucktail, and people are just like, no, inline spinners just straight up somehow. I mean, not saying they don't catch fish, but they're just not effective. I mean, I know people use spinner baits. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of wild to me why that wouldn't work, but it just seems like the shad
I
based
agree
fisheries are
completely. Well,
it's kind of
okay?
weird.
So you guys are now fishing the PMTT, and so you're fishing different bodies of water that you have to adjust in ways that I'm
Hmm.
sure you're not used to. Like, do you troll the same way? Like, do you try to stick with what works on different bodies of water, or are you listening to people talking and saying this is what works here on Cave Run? You can't do it that way, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. That, yeah, that to me is weird. The one not to be too far off the cave run, but like, for example, when I first listened to like your guys' podcast talking about Eastern trolling, or maybe other guys talk about Eastern trolling, I remember one of the first few things, it was troll like small baits high up and like extremely fast. Like the one thing that stood out was like 4 or 5 miles an hour. And at the time, I still wasn't even into trolling much here. And I think still the fastest I've ever gone catching a fish trolling is like 3.75. And the fastest I've ever caught one trolling in the fall is like 3.2. Like it's almost like I'm
Really?
scared to get it's like I'm scared to go faster, but I don't know if it's just like the fisheries
Oh
or
man,
what. I don't know. It's weird because
dude,
I
guys
hear
around
about
here they will fly around at 5 miles an hour and just like freaking burn stuff.
That's nuts.
And they catch fish, man. It's like but you're right. There's a lot more of trolling the smaller stuff. There's a lot of short line trolling, which again is stuff I'm not versed in. But some of these guys here, they're like they control these little crankbaits, you know, leader out, and they're getting fish, especially in the springtime. It's
yeah.
really kind of cool. Like some of these guys will have videos, where you're looking back and you can pretty much see the fish come up and hit the bait because it's so
Is it
close to you there.
are you mainly fish? Is it dirty water? Like relatively dirty
Yeah,
or ish?
yeah,
Because I know
dirty-ish. I mean, again, because some of them are natural. We have both natural lakes and reservoirs.
Mhm.
So the natural lakes I think are a little bit clearer than the reservoirs, but again, a lot of that is weather related and things like that. But it's not. I wouldn't call
Sure.
it the reservoirs. I would not call clear water.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I've heard people talk about that here in the Midwest, like that short line trolling thing, it just hasn't worked for me. And, let's say it's somebody from Minnesota, and I don't know, is that just because
Oh, guys catch
we're
them in
looking
the
at
prop
20?
wash. Literally,
Yeah,
literally prop wash fish. I mean, it's
yeah,
it's crazy.
that's wild. Um, Maybe to further go on trolling, I actually kind of wanted to ask this earlier when we were talking about your spinner baits. Did you troll your spinner baits much in like Canada or
Yes. Oh yeah.
okay? So up there, how did you like first learn to do that, or where or who taught you that, or how'd you get that method
Taking a
down?
guide.
Okay.
Um, okay, so that's the guy he's become one of my good buddies now, Reagan Thompson. He owns Paradise Cove cottages up on Lake Nipissing, and he is also a guide. So he's the one that guided me to 54 in 2017. Since then, I've fished with him a ton, and he's the one that absolutely swears by spinnerbait trolling, and it works flat. Like, I mean, the fish that he's caught, are crazy. And he's actually how I got started making the spinnerbaits, because he wasn't able to get the ones that he had been getting,
Oh,
and
right.
so he kept begging me to try to make them, Finally, I was like, all right, here, I'll make a couple, and they turned out pretty cool. And I was like, all right, these are pretty cool. So they're not it's not something that sells a lot locally. You know what I mean? It's really something that I use. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not making it, I guess, for the market, because if I was making it for the market, I probably wouldn't be making these spinner baits. You know?
Yeah. I don't know. They just fascinate me, the whole spinnerbait trolling. It was just something I never wrapped my head fully around. But since you make them so heavy, I feel like that
Oh,
helps
they'll stay
maybe.
down. Ryan bought one of those. What's it called? A fish hawk. Um, One of those things you can slide down the line and get an exact depth of your trolling
Okay.
of your bait back there. And with the 3 ounces, like those baits were still staying 4 feet down.
Nice.
With burn, going pretty fast if you get it back, 30, 40 feet. So these are not things that you're necessarily have to be burned at the top. Now they can be. You can bring them so they barely, where they are just submerged under the surface. Like in
Mm-hmm.
Canada, the way they fish them is and I don't know. I've never fished in Wisconsin or Minnesota, so I don't know what the type of weed coverage is there. But generally, you're fishing these weed flats in Canada where there's, maybe a 2 to 3 foot kill zone above the weeds. And if you can keep your spinnerbait above that, you can troll all day, but but you got to keep your eye on it, or you can drop that thing back there and get it down as deep as you want. It's really a pretty versatile trolling bait that,
It's mainly just
I don't know.
flatline trolling, I
Yep.
assume. Okay.
We overlooked that
Yep.
last year. We
Yeah,
definitely
Yeah,
did.
I
I'm
think we did.
starting to think
I
of
got-
some pretty serious applications where that could be pretty deadly.
I got one thing that I don't know if I had said this story at all last year, but Brian Max, before the first Bender weekend in July, when I was scoping out that water with a buddy, because we hit that hard that Saturday for the first time ever, but when I was there that Wednesday or Thursday for the true first time ever, didn't see a fish, but part of it I went trolling, and I was literally like, because we didn't have a lot of time, I wanted to cover water fast, so I pulled out the old Eastern style trolling. I started going 4.5, 5 miles an hour, and I threw back a 12-inch matlock about 15, 18 feet off the end of the rod. And the other one, I think I just was more of a flat side crankbait. I put it further back. I don't think it got much deeper. And I was running live scope to look back at the bait. And I remember specifically watching two muskies shoot straight vertical. One of them came up to look at it, and one of them, I think it went through the bait and then swam back down, and I think it missed it because I don't know what the hell that matlock is doing at 5 miles an hour, but I think it's a lot.
Yeah. I mean,
So-
I don't have a ton of experience, but my understanding is those things move like crazy.
Oh yeah, they do.
Now, my experience with live scope is limited, but on Nipissing last year, we did. My buddy Kellen brought his live scope up, and we did get to run watching the spinnerbaits behind the boat. And at one point, we were 99% sure that we watched a muskie come up behind the spinnerbait, and I actually, jerked the rod to make the spinnerbait come up, and the fish still didn't, and then it just kind of. But I don't know what I'm looking at. It really kind of just looked like a whitish blob that was like
it's tough.
going up towards the bait, and my buddy's like, "That's a fish. That's a fish." I'm like, "Okay, I'll trust you." I mean, I don't know.
It happens fast while trolling. I mean, yet I don't have a super ton of experience, but we've seen plenty now follow trolling, and we've
you run a
actually
tiller,
watched.
right?
Yep, we run a tiller and
Now,
watched a
a
few
lot of
eat.
guys like that for trolling.
It's pretty gnarly. There's not a ton of people that have trolled with me yet, but when I troll, especially in the fall, contour trolling, I'm a freaking maniac. I'm literally going in inside of every little turn. I'm getting baits hung up on cribs like every other pass. I'm diving baits right into shit all the time. It's my MO.
That can get expensive.
Yeah.
I got a lure retriever from Cave Run, and I'm about to buy another when we go down there, so I have a backup. Because
now, what are you guys trolling? Like matlocks and stuff like that, or what else?
gonna be honest here, we haven't
Yeah,
even caught anything on the supernatural. I've had one hit, lost a fish. Otherwise, it was that one that missed it in the summer. Mainly jakes, depth raiders, shallow invaders we do well on.
Grandma, 13-inch grandma.
The grandmas. We just got a legend perch bait for the first time this year.
Oh,
I like the
man.
action of that one.
Okay, right there. Like you can put them all away because the perch bait is the thing. That's by far my favorite trolling bait. In my limited experience, again, that's a Canadian thing, although it is a Western Pennsylvania bait.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
It is amazing how many local baits are from here in Western Pennsylvania that get fished all over the place. And I was going to ask you guys,
a lot of baits, or a lot of crankbaits, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, do you guys have do you have local crankbait makers there? Because we have tons of local, like, guys here, we run Bakers, you run Leo's, you run Wiley's, you run perch baits, you run Shaw's meatballs. Like, these are all local guys, like, that are right
great
here
name.
in PA.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. That meatball looks so cool.
Meatballs have like this cult following, man. Like uh, another,
I,
these trolling these guys. Evan Shoss is one that, I've never fished with him, but he's a great troller and his baits just catch fish, man. He's got, again, a cult following. And these are guys that are making stuff in their basement just like me. It's not a depth raider, and that's no knock on Joe Bucher or anything, but it's like that's coming from, where's that made?
Yeah, who knows?
Catches
It's
fish.
and and that's for sure. But then when you start to use,
The meatball.
I don't know, it kind of feels a little bit better whenever you're catching fish on stuff that you shake the guy's
Yeah.
hand that makes it.
For
And
sure.
that, every year you wait to buy his bait at Muskie Max because that's the only way you can buy it. You can't
Yeah.
go to
Mhm.
Muskie Tackle online or these big box stores. You got to buy it from, some of these local Canadian guys that came down from Canada, like for the New York show. You can't get their baits. You flat out, unless you're going to the Muskie Odyssey or winning it in like some type of a raffle on Facebook, like you can't get your hands on these things.
Yeah.
I
No,
That's
I,
what
I think
makes it
there's
cool. That's, I
it's
mean,
cool.
Tried
especially,
to.
yeah,
I've
right.
tried to on Facebook get those meatballs. I think I tried to before they became popular because I've seen recently in the last few months, all the Facebook lots going kind of crazy because it's winter time and the prices for those meatball lots are for sure double than what they were last year. And I was pissed I didn't get one because they just look pretty
Be
money.
patient.
Because
Be patient.
yeah, right.
Evan, I I think you'll be able to get them in a more easy way soon.
Okay.
That's my understanding. So, and I don't know that for sure, but yeah, his baits have an amazing following, and I think he's working on just trying to make them more available than they currently are. Because some of these bait companies, some of these bait guys are almost impossible to get. Like I go in on these raffles all the time on Facebook with DK because I want DKs, and like, dude, you'll get shanked for a DK at a show.
Yeah. Or those
You should have seen
Kirby's.
you should have, yeah, you should have seen the line for Baker at the New York show. It was like there a mad rush for his booth. And that's cool, man. I think
That is
that's
pretty
cool as shit
cool.
that's people just making their baits. Again, not someone building it in a factory. That's just somebody making a bait that catches muskies. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know if we exactly have as much of that over here. I mean, I've only been to the Wausau show, which is more of a niche show itself of
I think
more
Brady's
small.
coming. I think Brady is coming to that.
I'm really
Uh
excited to meet Brady and the Bam
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 Bam.
mix.
Yeah.
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 Can't wait to
Yeah.
get one
Oh
of
yeah.
those.
Did you pick up a couple there at New
Oh
York?
yeah. Yeah. I got a couple of his early on, and then I picked up one of his glow fins in New York, and I
Nice.
actually picked up a couple for a couple of listeners out in the Midwest because they weren't able to get their hands on them, sent them out. So,
Nice.
trying to get his baits out there. He's been doing it right, man. He's just that he's taking his time with it, and I'm I'm excited to see what he does.
Have you thrown those Bam Bam? What's the one, Gus? What's it
Bowfin?
actually called? The bowfin?
Bowfin.
Bowfin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bowfin.
and I took one of them up to Canada and I threw it a good bit, and I didn't catch anything on it, but it certainly feels good. It feels more, I would describe it more toad like
Okay.
than
Like
a
like a double dog
Medusa
or
or
Medusa.
something. It's got more head drop than float, if that
Nice.
That's good.
makes a lot of
That's
sense.
good. That's how
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
like to fish stuff.
And
So
he's making heavy versions and all kinds of customization. So we'll see how his booth does up there. That'll be cool.
I think he's gonna do well.
I think he'll do well. I mean, always looking for like a new rubber bait, not to knock the main staples because they work for sure. But the
Yeah.
fact that he's adding already like versatility, like easy ways to put weights on them and stuff like that, like that's pretty legit. People will
And
see that.
rubber baits are, I've never I don't have a lot of confidence fishing them because I just, that's when I'm out casting, again, it kind of goes to you want to maximize your time. So my confidence baits are bucktails. So last year was my first year really trying to focus on fishing rubber, and I did get a muskie on a toad, which was pretty cool.
Nice.
So that gave me a little bit
Nice.
of confidence in it, and so this year I'm really looking forward to fishing more, fishing more rubber. You guys fish. It seems like so many guys that's now their more or less go to, as opposed
Yeah.
to option number 2 or 3 that it used to be years ago.
I mean, I'm even when I'm alone, but I'm always out of the back of the boat. It's 100% rubber for me because there's just something about if you're gonna throw a bucktail, having it the first out just seems to be the best. Because like if a fish is hot,
Yeah,
you might as well give it like the best hookup and the best figure 8 hookup lure of all time, and then bring in the old dive and rise rubber bait or something in the back,
right.
in case it's not working. But yeah, rubber.
So what do you throw?
Rubber's a
Tubes
staple around.
or Medusas or what?
Mainly tubes and kind of go from there. I don't know. I felt like the past few years it just changes like by week almost. All of a sudden we'll hammer a couple on one bait and they'll be like, oh, I kind of forgot about this Medusa. Toss that on. Maybe it doesn't work and be like, oh, I'll try a bulldog. And then all of a sudden, boom, we catch a fish and then we're obsessed with bulldogs for a week. And they'd be like, oh shit, I got to go back to the tube. I think those are going to still work again. It's kind of just random. I don't know exactly how to explain. I mean, other than like some have different applications on kind of where you're fishing it, certain types of water. I mean, there's certain bodies of water where I just like one or the other, I guess. But it's hard to explain. I don't know. I usually use each.
How deep are your lakes? I mean, because I think your lakes are, from what I understand, are sort of similar to my local lake, which is a small kettle lake, natural kettle lake. It's very small.
Well, let's just compare it because we have so much diversity. I mean, we were fishing some lakes with sandgrass and 25 plus feet. We're fishing some lakes that were only rock. We're fishing some lakes. We'll just compare it to the Eagle River chain here. Weed Edge is about 7 feet. Slight, mainly stained water throughout the whole system. Basins of 12 to 22
30.
feet.
That's right. You're in the Eagle
muck.
River chain. I don't. Yes, my Midwest geography is not great.
That's all right.
Although I am
all
going to be
good.
driving through there this summer.
Where are you headed?
I'm headed to the Boundary Waters.
Oh,
I'm
nice.
taking my kids up. I'm taking my kids, my dad, and my uncle, and one of my cousins. 6 of us are going to go for a canoe trip for a week up there.
I wonder how close you'll drive to Eagle River. Maybe stop and take a half day. Have Gus take you guys out, do a little musky fishing.
Ooh,
I could do that. I got some buddies if we need extra space for a boat too.
let's see.
So
I'll have to think about that.
Are you seeing Guru up there?
So he's in International Falls. So I'm going to be going to Ely.
Yeah.
And Ely is, so basically I'm going to be going to Duluth and then straight up north.
Okay.
And I think International Falls is still a good bit
way west.
off to the west.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
Have you been up there before?
Yeah. Oh, my dad, like, that's kind of my introduction to Canada. That's
Awesome.
kind of why I love going up there, is because he took me on canoe trips like this. He was not a musky fisherman, but we, fished for pike, bass, walleye. There actually are no musky in the Boundary, maybe like a couple little lakes, but he's kind of like the camping purist. So
Nice.
we're going on these canoe trips where, we're just, twice we did fly-in trips where they just drop us off in a lake and you paddle back for 6 days, and
That's cool.
shit in the woods, and you catch what you eat.
Yeah, I was gonna say you probably assume like half meals are gonna be what you're catching almost.
Absolutely.
And maybe trapping / killing. I've heard that people do on those trips too. I don't know if you guys do it
because that's your main source of protein, really.
Yeah.
Because you can't bring any refrigeration in because you're
No.
literally packing it all in. So it's like a backpacking trip in the sense that everything is the smallest and lightest you could possibly imagine, because you're portaging everything.
Yeah. What was the pull on going to Boundary Waters if you're from Pennsylvania? Is there not like a place in Canada?
Algonquin Park.
That's a haul.
Yeah. Oh, it is. So Algonquin Park is a very similar type of canoe area wilderness, but the fishing is not nearly as good. So we really drive all the we went there one time and my dad and I just absolutely fell in love with it. And he's now 76. You know, it's I think this is the time to do it one more time. And I'm taking my two oldest kids. They're 14 and my daughter will be 13. So this is a good time to kind of baptize them
Hmm.
in the wildlife. I mean, they're already
That'd be
very
awesome.
outdoorsy kids because we have a cabin. Like they spend every weekend we can at the lake, so they swim in the lake. They're not kids that are like afraid to be outdoors. Like this
Mhm.
isn't now. Are they going to be ready for the physical rigors of a trip like this? I'm not sure. That's what we're going to have to prepare them for.
I mean, they're going to remember that though for the rest of their life. And, I think doing those cool experiences when you're young kind of shape who you end up becoming when you're older. Cause like, I mean, if we never had gotten a cabin in northern Wisconsin, we probably wouldn't be sitting here today talking about musky fishing. So you
Yeah,
just,
I mean, here I live in Pittsburgh, so if you don't have something like that, like how it's hard to get your kids outside these days. It is
right.
like if you don't have something kind of built in a way to get them outdoors. Maybe that's the boat. Maybe that's the family having the boat that every weekend they can get the family outdoors. Mine was getting a cabin on a lake because, I wanted to be able to maximize my time, and not be trailering a boat all over the place. So I was like, all right, if I'm going to maximize my kids' time outdoors, let's do it with a little cabin on a little lake that we've been going to forever. And it's very rustic. These cabins were built in 1937 and like
Oh,
they were
wow.
not, yeah, I mean, this is not, I do not own any type of a palatial, estate. Like these are literal cabins.
I mean, that's great though. It's, you're getting out of the city, doing something different. And you just got if I remember, you just got a new boat this last year, right?
Yeah, I bought a tracker this fall right before I went to Canada because I had a like a little it's almost like a skiff. Like it's a 16-foot boat, but it's like just so unstable. It's just totally flat top. I've knocked two rods off of it already and
Oh
lost in
no.
like $600 rod setups. Like it's a cool little boat, but the thing is just not cool for family or anyone else.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I got to get something bigger. So I bought the tracker, which has a 60 horse motor, but my lake is a 9.9 restricted lake. So
Mhm.
I got to have a kicker put on it this spring so that I can use it. But that's
Okay.
gonna again that'll get my kids out fishing more because they
Yeah.
don't really like going on my little boat. In the pontoon boat, that's the family truckster. That's not set up for musky
Right.
fishing.
Right. No, that's tough. I've musky fished on a pontoon before and
It's not ideal.
not
We've caught
No,
ideal.
them on it
although
too.
there's a local guy here, Brian Luffy, who he swears by it. Like he's got
No
his
way.
pontoon set up. He's got like multiple rods out,
It would be
and
pretty
he's got a
sweet.
grill. It's a
Oh,
pretty sweet setup.
It would be the ultimate like sucker fishing setup because you could just have if you had good rod holders, you could just chill. He got all the
Yeah.
space of a pontoon boat. I mean, it'd be tough to land them ish, but
Well, I really thought that the pontoon boat. Okay, so when we bought our cabins back in 2018, one of the things that came with it was a 1977 Aqua Patio 18-foot pontoon boat that had literally sat on the dock for 20 some years and hadn't been run. They kind of used it as additional dock furniture. They would just wheel it out there every year, park it on the dock, and so it was completely not usable. So that was part of our purchase. So my dad and I decided, let's try to make lemonade out of these lemons here and try to do something. So we refinished it. Like we put a new deck down on it. And I'm like, all right, this thing we could make this into a musky craft. And you
yeah.
know what? Pontoon boats they just don't as much as it looks like it would be a great platform, it is just they're just hard to operate in.
They there's this party boat that you can rent out on the Eagle River chain that's like got a kind of like a main cabin on it, like where you could probably sit, maybe 6 or 7 people. And then it actually has 2 kind of extended low level decks on the side. And I'm like, okay, that'd be pretty bitching to rent out for a weekend and bring like a little grill, no matter what the weather is in the middle of November, October. You get 6 people, just put 10 suckers around the sides of it and just go float for the day and have a few drinks and see what happens.
Well, see, what I've always thought would be cool is, aren't there places, at least I think there used to be places on the Lake of the Woods where you could like basically rent a houseboat and tow your fishing boat along and just kind of explore.
Seen
I don't know
videos
if
on
that's
that.
something that actually happens
I
or
think they do
not,
that in
but that seems
Vermilion
like it'd
too.
be really.
I'm pretty sure we see one of those boats out there, Max. One of those like
I
big
saw all sorts of
barges
things out there.
I thought I heard
thought
about
I don't know
that.
what they were doing out there, but yeah, no,
Well,
I watched a video on that on Lake of the Woods, and I then looked it up. So I'm like, this would be awesome, and they're not actually that expensive. Like I would,
Yeah.
I
Gone
think you
through
get a group of
logistics?
6 up there. I think we could make it work. It'd be pretty
Well,
sweet.
you guys are young. Like, yeah, before you have families, do all that stuff,
We'd
man.
probably
Like,
get lost, but
not that it changes that much,
You ain't
but
driving,
when you're
Brian.
young, man, do all that stuff.
Yeah.
That would be.
I'll drive the house around. Beach
Nah,
us on a
you
rock
ain't,
bar.
dog. No, you ain't.
The last thing we need is you behind the wheel of anything. Yeah, no, I think it's good advice. We're trying to, make the most of this right now and fish as much as we possibly can. And I think, something that I've heard you touch on is, like you're saying, you don't get out and musky fish as much as obviously you'd like to in Pennsylvania, but you do like a week trip up to Nipissing almost every year, right? And that's kind of been, your deal.
Yeah. So if I like, if I had a focus all year round, it's kind of I'm always looking forward to my week on Nipissing, because that's my week where I can shut it all off. I can forget about work. I can forget about, even when I go out and fish on a Friday, like, my brain doesn't shut off. Like, I'm constantly thinking about work.
Right.
My phone doesn't shut off. Like, my clients don't give a shit that I want to go out and fish. Where when I go to Nipissing, I can shut it all off. And I can just say, listen, guys, leave me the hell alone. I'm
Right.
just going. And it kind of sucks, because then I kind of limit myself to focusing on that, where I would like to focus more. And I did fish more locally, and I fished one day tournament. So I hope to fish a couple more like local Muskies Inc. tournaments this year, because I enjoy the atmosphere and kind of
they're
the
awesome.
just simple competitive nature of things. So
Yeah.
I hope to do some more of that locally this year.
What keeps you going back to Nipissing? If you're blocking off a week every year, have you thought about branching out to other bodies, or is there just something about Nipissing that makes you
Something about Nipissing? It I caught the fish that literally changed my life there, that kind of like changed the trajectory of my life in a lot of ways. And Reagan has become, one of my best buddies. Like this year, Nick and we went up a day early, and we slept in Reagan's trailer, just so we could fish the better moon that first day, so we weren't traveling and we get up there, just drink a few beers, sleep in the trailer, and then next day we check into the cabin. And it's more or less one of those places where I feel very at home there. And that means a lot to me, because it's, if I'm going to go learn another body of water, that's going to be tough. Like, this is a big body of water, and you could fish this place for 100 years and never cover it all.
That's awesome.
So, well, yeah, I'm open to fishing all over the place. Like, if I'm going to put a week aside, it's most likely going to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard stories and rumors from that place, even without ever, knowing that like you've gone there and stuff like that. It was just from in the past. But have you ventured down to the French River at all? Like any of the parts of that, or you stick to the lake?
I have not, but I plan to. Actually,
Okay.
It was funny you bring that up. One of the guys that came down to the New York show, is a cool guy named Rory. He's part of the Muskies Canada from Sudbury. And so Sudbury is right there on the Nipissing and French River area. And so he was telling me all about fishing the French and giving me little spots to try. So now that I have the tracker, that opens me up to being able to fish. Like when I go up there for a week, I can trailer it. Whereas up until having this boat, I was constrained to having a rental boat or
Okay.
fishing with Reagan. So that's really just, you know, I have fished the mouth of the French,
Mhm.
but that's not like fishing the French.
Okay.
Right.
The mouth of the French is more, that's like big open water where you're fishing like these big underwater humps. I mean, there are holes at the mouth of the French that are like 190 foot deep, and shoals that come up to like 8 feet.
God.
I mean, it is
Trying to look at it.
crazy.
That's nutty.
I don't even. That's like, that's like foreign. I don't know how
In
you.
this
like a
water,
nightmare.
and dude, in this water is so
You-
big. Like, go look at a map and look at the mouth of the French where the Lake Nipissing like funnels down into it, and it
I'm
is
doing it
just
right now.
gigantic.
I've
And
looked at Nipissing before.
and go on Navionics and start looking there and start looking
Oh,
at the
man.
mouth of the French.
Isn't
That's
it?
a
Oh,
big
sorry.
body of water.
Isn't it really shallow on the western end? Like,
Yeah. Like so where I
what?
stay, we're on the West Bay, and West Bay is very shallow. Like there's the Southern Trough, which
Oh,
has
there's West
has
Bay.
a bunch of deep spots. But then if you go up into the West Arm, some of Warren Bay has 90-foot holes. Like West Arm has a bunch of deep spots. But
There's Warren Bay. Yep, I got it.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, the average depth of Lake Nipissing is 12 foot, something like that,
Wow.
which
Wow.
is why the weather gets so crazy on the main lake. Like, dude, there are guys that get stranded and have to camp out.
Yeah.
That's
There are guides on the southern portion of the lake where, like, if you get a bad wind for a week, you can't get out of whatever little cove you're in. Where I go in the West Bay, even with bad wind, bad weather, I can always fish, up into the West Arm, and there's always options for me. That's one of the reasons why. Now, to get to the mouth of the French from where I stay is an hour drive in the tracker. I mean, it's a 30-mile trip because the tracker with a
Right.
60 isn't going, I'm not getting 50 miles an hour. This thing's lucky to get 27, 28.
We faced that battle.
Yeah.
yeah.
Big stretches of
The-
water become daunting when you can't get it up to 60. Like Reagan's boat, it's mainly when I'm with him that I'll explore all the way out there because he's got a 350 on it, and then, we just talk about having to pay extra for gas because holy shit, do we burn some gas going from the West Bay to West
That
Arm to mouth
that
of the
lake
French.
doesn't look small. I'm trying to like compare it to something like in our area. I'm almost looking at it. It's longer than like Lake
Bigger. It
Winnebago.
looks bigger than Mille Lacs.
It's what is it? It's got to be over 100,000 acres, right? I don't know if they
I'm not even
mark them
sure
in
what
that
the
side.
acreage is, but
They probably
Yeah.
don't use that in Canada. I'm sure
So real quick, when you guys go and do this trip, when you're not fishing with your buddy Reagan, are you guys, kind of doing what like Gus, Brian, and I do, and you're looking at Navionics and trying to find some different spots to fish on this big beast of a lake?
yeah,
Or
you
yeah,
have paper maps.
we do. There are paper maps, but I also have there's a pretty decent Navionics chip
okay,
for the lake. But yeah, you just kind of try to identify different spots. But because we've fished with Reagan so much, we've been pretty freaking brave in trying to get out onto the main lake where normally I don't think we would. I mean, we took a rental boat almost out to like the mouth of the French. I mean, and
Right.
when people heard that we did that, they thought that we were absolutely insane because of how, but it just turned out that day was just incredibly calm and we were able to do it. But, it's just, you just kind of got to find whatever you can. There's so many spots. It's so overwhelming. You just kind of break it down, and I haven't had a lot of success. I've caught a couple big fish, but in terms of like lots of fish success? No, I've been skunked an entire week up there, and that's humbling. You know,
Yeah.
it's real humbling.
Especially when you go to Canadian waters, you're expecting like, as to put it with plainly with poor words, you're expecting dumb fish, that's what you
Yeah,
see on YouTube. That's what you always see. And then to go there and that I feel like, but then again, you're going there for a shot at something special, like the first, muskie you're talking about, that 54.
right.
You're not
Another
gonna
a
exactly
guy
get
that
that.
listens that I've met just from listening. He listens to our podcast. A buddy named Scott. He got a 55 up there last year.
Whew.
Up in the French mouth of the French someplace. I mean, it's you can change your life in a lot of ways with fishing up there, but it's definitely not a numbers lake. It's not like going to
Yeah.
St. Clair or something like that where you have the chance of putting 18 fish in the bag on a day. Like that ain't gonna happen on Lake Nipissing.
Right. It kind of makes the embrace the suck part of it worth it a little bit more though, if you know that, it's just really one giant fish can make the trip. I don't know, Brian, do you think both of us would make it out of a Nipissing trip alive if we went a full week without getting a fish?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, you think
Come
so?
on.
Just kidding.
A couple black eyes.
Luckily, Nick
I would just like to
Fiesler,
adventure.
believe me, luckily Nick Fiesler has the patience of a saint because he could like see me getting frustrated. And
Yeah.
like he's like giving me little pep talks. He's just like, it's all right. It's all right. Just like kind of
He
quietly. He's
seems
real
like the
calm.
glue guy.
You know. Oh yeah, he's the keep it calm because
Yeah.
if I were fishing in a boat with Donnie, Jesus, we both might be off. We might both jump off the sides. Between the two of us, we both get angry. It's funny how you. I assume you guys get along very well fishing, and I think fishing with guys that you get along with. I've fished with all the hunks now, and it's fun fishing with the different personalities and
For sure.
seeing
Yeah.
how who does what, who's good at what. It really is fun, man.
Yeah,
So-
the boat dynamics are the best. Sorry, Gus, go ahead.
No, I just want to play a game here quick, Brian. So, when we take our
I
first
like
Nipissing,
games.
when we take our first Nipissing
Just like the
trip,
newlywed game.
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
got this pretty cool spot I already got marked out. So there's this like
Alright.
neck down, there's some islands, and we're gonna be tossing over a 198-foot hole. You good with that?
Nah.
What do you
Move it
mean?
along. Hey, I like to check. I've never seen 190 feet below me, so I'll check that depth and be like, all right, keep
Oh, and
putting.
you can be in 6 feet of water casting into 192 feet.
Wow.
Like
See,
That's
I
what
would
it
do the
looks
other way
like here.
around. I would do 190 feet under me and cast it into 6. That sounds a little bit better.
now, if you Googled it, I would bet you guys would be surprised that Nipissing is not nearly as far away from you guys as you'd think going up
Yeah.
over the north.
Let me tell you,
Oh yeah, you just go through the Straits of
17
Mackinac.
hours.
No. You just go up through the UP
I'll bet it's
and
11.
you cut over Sault Ste. Marie. I'm looking at it on the map. I don't know. I bet you it's the
Oh,
same as
yeah,
us
yeah.
going to like Lac Seul.
Yeah,
I
10
bet.
hours that way.
So wait, Brian, what is
See,
it to Nipissing?
That's about what it is.
10 hours.
For me to leave my house where I'm sitting right now would be 10 hours. I always leave from my cabin, so it takes us about 7.5 or 8 hours. But that's a hell of a lot more doable than going to like Lake of the Woods and stuff like that for me. It's
Shit, from Eagle River, it's 9 hours.
yep.
Could do that in an
Dang.
afternoon.
Yeah, if we want to go up to Lac Seul, the northernmost Northwest Ontario lake, that's 10 hours from Eagle River still. So
Yeah.
cutting over straight east to Nipissing was quicker. If we want to
And
go
you
to
have
the
that
west,
whole Georgian Bay. I mean, that like you guys really want to get crazy. Like I've never fished the Georgian Bay, but
I would
that's
love
like
to take a week on that.
Mecca. I'm not even prepared to really kind of
I
explore
would
that.
wait to go to Georgian Bay until they come out with like mechanical arms, where like I don't get tired. Yeah. They could almost cast for me.
But there's so many of these destination places. Like you kind of have to, I don't know, I kind of feel like if I spent my entire career going to different places, I could probably do that. But when I say career, why would I say that's a stupid way to put it? Like my
Your life. Yeah,
fishing
I got you.
Yeah.
life.
I got you.
Would I have more success going and trying a different lake every year, or going back to Lake Nipissing and,
Learning it more.
pounding it every year
Yeah.
and learning it?
I think
Right.
I think as long as you try new spots, obviously it's one thing if Nipissing was a fraction of the size, but if you try new spots, it will keep it interesting and new and help you learn. But I feel like what you would probably want to stick away from is like getting stuck in a rut, hitting the same spots, Like that's even
Yes.
I've seen it a little bit here, just fishing some of the same lakes, same spots. I'm like, God, what am I doing when there's 50 other lakes in a small radius around me? That'd be just like you
Because
looking
if
at a
you
map
go,
on Nipissing, there's 50 spots in a small radius around me.
you kind of look at it like, if you've seen fish there, it's such a big body of water. Like you kind of want to stay around the places where you've seen fish. It's hard
Mhm.
to explore new waters when you only have a week. I mean, really, a week is not that much time. You get out there on the water and you go to
Goes
a
by
couple of
fast.
spots, and it's like, holy shit, like, it goes by a lot faster than you think. And
Mhm.
really, a dream of mine would be to take like 3 months and go stay up at Reagan's place as kind of a base camp on Lake Nipissing, be able to fish all of Nipissing, French River, and down into the Georgian Bay, and possibly write a book about it someday.
Time on the water too.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what the thought would be something similar to that. Because
I
I do have,
remember. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
through the Hunks podcast and just fishing on Nipissing, I think I've established enough connections, where I could fish with a bunch of people. Like, I've known
Yeah.
enough people that, like, I would have people that would, that I could fish with and kind of keep it fresh. Again, that's a total pipe dream. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously,
I'd come
Right.
it's
visit
kind
you
of a
for
dream.
that 3 month. I'll give you company for a week.
Oh,
Tackle
yeah.
some
I
new
mean, and that's
water.
the thing. I know a bunch of people that come up there, and I would fish with them, each time they come up. I could invite people up to stay. Um, I think it would be awesome. But
Be one hell of a book. I'd read that in a heartbeat.
convincing my wife for me to take 3 months off of work is a little different. Maybe if I can get my practice on autopilot here in the next couple of years,
There
I could do that.
you go. They got any reciprocity with bar license from Minnesota? I'll step in for you and
There you go.
try not to run it into the ground.
There you go. Hey, if you want to learn the dirty side of criminal defense law, man, I'm your man.
I give you props, man. I give you props. Yeah, I don't know if if you remember, but when we were on the Hunks podcast, you guys were upset with us that we hadn't read Time on the Raw Water. Well, I think especially Ryan was upset. So I was like, all right, I got homework now. And I actually went and read the full book pretty in short order after you guys had assigned me that homework assignment. Interesting book. I don't know if you really remember it or if you know much of it.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's funny because it's kind of hailed as this like classic musky book, and the dude just really doesn't catch that many muskie.
No, it's melodramatic. It's extremely melodramatic.
So melodramatic.
Yeah.
I kept waiting for him to find his groove or this
Life
big fish to
changing.
finally
Yeah,
be
something
caught.
was gonna happen, and he's
And,
just
like,
plugging away. Just keep
And I'm
plugging
like,
away.
I'm getting pretty close to the end here, and he still really hasn't caught a fish over 40 inches yet. Not to like be a hater, but I'm like, man, spending a lot of time, and shit made me feel pretty good about myself. I'm like, all right, but back in I think, and that's more in jest. The main takeaway I had from it was like how different musky fishing was back then in northern Wisconsin and everywhere. The perspective, the way it was talked about, the way it was kind of like hailed by people, and how much more it was a lot more difficult to catch them. You talk about guys marking rock bars with milk jugs and then hand trolling them for the full day. And that's how they were able to troll structure. And now, obviously, that sounds asinine to people like us. Just crazy.
Have you guys read Larry Ramsell's Muskie Compendium, either volumes 1 or 2?
New homework
No, I
assignment.
don't think so.
Yeah, new homework
Watch the
assignment,
one.
especially because you want to talk about perspective. It's basically, just the Muskie Encyclopedia, and some of the historic catches he details, catches from Wisconsin in 1956, like it goes back, and it's not just talking about only the biggest fish. It chronicles more or less every big muskie caught as he could document it. And you look back at like how these folks caught them. There's pictures of like a lady, from 1938 in her house gown. She's all all
Right.
gussied up, and she's holding a 48-inch muskie, and it's like, and then you hear the stories about the record, and all the hullabaloo about the record, and
Yeah.
what's the guy up in Wisconsin,
Louis Spray.
Louis Spray. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, the history is just awesome, and I
Yeah.
love it. And muskie fishing is certainly in a different place right now than it was back then. I mean,
It's come a
I
long
can't
way.
speak from experience, yeah, but can you imagine them, with 10-foot rods and Tranks 500s and
Live scope.
uh,
I don't think they're throwing a Big O's 3-ounce spinnerbait with the equipment they had back then.
right.
No.
But does that make it better or worse? I don't think that there is.
Yeah,
I
right.
think it's we're certainly in a different era today. That's for sure.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I think, hey, if anything, right now, I think we're at a little bit of a crossroads on some of the, I think as equipment and technology has continued to progress, feels like we're starting to get to a little bit of a crossroads in the industry, with just like, all right, when is the innovation gonna slow down, or maybe
Right.
like stop?
Plateau.
Because plateau.
Well,
I mean, like we've used the golf analogy a million times. Like,
yeah. I was just going to say, that's exactly what I was just going to say. I mean, golf eventually hasn't had to cap it, club face speed and even, you see 460cc on every club face because that's the maximum. They said you can't quit. You got to quit making them bigger. At what point is musky fishing?
Well, and they're going to roll the golf ball back. Not only are they going to stop,
I mean,
but they're literally going to try to reverse.
Which is just silly, which is just stupid, which I'm glad I don't play golf anymore, quite honestly, because that would just aggravate me. Golf is already a hard enough sport for amateurs. The idea that amateurs are out there hitting the ball so freaking far that you got to roll the game back is simply ludicrous, and it's just going to lose people.
I don't think amateurs will feel a difference. I don't think it'll be noticeable.
I don't know. I think the whole idea of it for amateurs would bother me. Again,
it's not good marketing for the game.
No, I mean, if it's not very welcoming to people, for someone that you want to grow the game, like you're not trying to make the game harder for them. What we just did this Tee It Forward campaign for how many years, like trying to get people to move up closer, so that the game isn't so slow. And now we're just going to roll the game. I don't know. It's
yeah. But
I'm glad that's not my area.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's a good analogy to where musky fishing is at, because like I've kind of thought about this when you hear people now that are using the 10-foot rods that are like, yeah, I never would have ever thought we'd be throwing 10-footers, and like when I've thrown our buddies 10-foot Thorn Bros rod, it's great, like it's awesome, it's an insanely, like it makes throwing big rubber freaking easy, and it's amazing, but it's like I can't imagine having a longer rod. Like I don't know.
Right.
At what point is there just a point of diminishing return?
The golf. Let me circle back to the golf analogy real quick, because one of my more significant athletic accomplishments, if you're gonna call it that, would be I won a club championship at my country club in 2012. Okay, I don't know how old you guys were back then, but do you remember the belly putter days?
Yeah.
I used one for a year.
I was a belly. Oh, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Loved it. And they banned it. I won a club championship in 2012 using a belly putter, and I think it was in 2013 or 2014 that it was banned. And
They
know,
stop you
so,
somehow.
They cited you. They were like, this guy's gonna break all the records.
so that begs the question, you know, does my measly my one bit of piece of pride in
No.
my life, you know, do I get it's got a giant asterisk next to
No,
it because I
it
used
does
a
not.
goddamn belly putter? Like, you got to take everything from me?
No, it does
Jeez.
not. It does
What
not.
what'd you shoot?
Let's see.
Was it
72,
match play?
72, 70.
Yeah, it's a good 3 days right there. A
All
good 3
striker.
rounds.
Yeah.
Consistent.
Yeah.
Which then the next year we got a new member, and he won it by like 13 shots.
New
He shot
sheriff in
like
town.
60,
Dang.
yeah, 65, 67, 68 or something like that. And we're just all like, okay.
Hey,
All
if you still had that belly putter, you might have got him.
Yeah, exactly. See, it wasn't about the putter. It was the game. It was the Indian, not the arrow.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I guess it's something that I've thought about a bit here as of late, as when is I guess enough just gonna finally be enough. And who
Are we
knows?
gonna? I mean, we're gonna have underwater cameras at some point that like scan in real time. That is not, you know, that I don't know. Or we're gonna start sending drones out, underwater drones.
Submarines just
Dude.
ping them.
I
I
ain't
don't
fishing if
know.
that's what it's gonna be.
I mean,
I might
really,
move.
what is next? I mean,
Yeah,
I
all
don't
I've
know
heard is
where
that
it's-
whatever I've heard from other people that like, well, wait till you see what's coming next. It's scary, and I haven't heard any specifics, but like,
yeah, I
don't
know.
really
I've heard
love
the same
sound
kind of
Live
veiled threats
360.
I don't
too.
really love the sound of that. Like, not a fan of that. I mean,
auto
No, yeah.
tracking on a fish with live or something crazy. Like
I've heard that same type of stuff. Like, wait until what's what the industry has cooking up. Well,
yeah, it's like,
I mean,
I don't know if I want to know what's cooking.
dude,
right. But you guys are
What-
fishing in the PMTT. So if you don't have it, like, okay, or was it ruled out was it out last year
no live
completely?
scope. Yeah, zero.
Okay.
None. We didn't use
100%
it
entire
live.
year.
And are they going to stick with that, or are they going to?
Yeah.
I think they're
Yeah?
gonna stick with that.
And
yeah.
they've
Okay,
and they've
I think
even
that's fair.
I think it is too. And they've altered it too. I think, well, one, they changed it mid-year, if you remember, in 2022. And
Yeah, which is not
they
cool.
just ruled
I mean, that's tough.
right.
Yeah.
Big controversy over that. Probably not a good idea middle of the year. But they also changed it. I think it was outlawed only during tournament hours or like 2 hours before the first morning. And then now it's like outlawed from the night of registration, which would be, say, a Friday night, until the tournament ends on like Sunday. Like, you are not allowed to use it at all between tournament hours or like before each morning or something like that. So they're
Okay,
like,
so
they really
how?
cracked down on that.
What type of enforcement is there, if any at all?
We got no idea. We haven't been on the water in those hours to see if there's somebody watching.
Well, no, I mean even just during the event. Like, is anyone keeping an eye on boats, or
Other boats, other tournament boats,
Yeah.
really? Honestly, they're the guys that I think they hop in their boat for like part of it after, they send everybody off at the dock in the morning. I think they eventually get in their boat and drive around. I don't think they do it like they used to, though. There's no,
Because if your boat's already all hooked up for live scope and you're using it, in your regular fishing day, and then you go to the PMTT, or like, do you have to completely disable the unit? You have to remove the unit? Like, what?
Huh.
I don't even.
you're supposed
I
to
don't even
get
know
rid
how
of
they
it
would enforce
completely.
it.
We're lucky that we got just the ice bundle, so we can just tote it right out of our boat completely.
Yeah.
And
That's
take
what my
the
buddy
unit,
Kellen and Donnie
which is
just got
over
that
the
too.
side. But it's like, I don't know, somebody could have one mounted underneath their boat or mounted on a trolling motor. I guess, yeah, I don't know why there's not. It's
Is any
pretty
of that
loose.
stuff through hull? Yeah, I don't.
I don't know. Shaky stuff.
Yeah,
Might have to.
I can't imagine it would be. Yeah, I mean, because you need
Yeah.
that whole apparatus and whatnot.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I'd
don't
like
know.
to
It's
think
weird.
that the self-policing is probably, I don't know if it's
But you're talking
quote-unquote
about big money,
Yeah, right.
We
No,
got
it's
we
true.
got assholes that stuff lead and walleye,
We got weights and fish.
and yeah,
Yeah, I do find it weird being now doing the PMTT for a bit that they're like the one tournament that they don't check compartments anymore. Like we do the local ones on the chain, Spring Classic and Paul's Pro Am, smaller money, less boats usually, and they check everybody's compartments beforehand and give you the tags, that colors, days, tags. Just like PMTT, they got the color stickers and the mix and match, but I don't know. It seems a little too loose for a big money tournament. I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah. Well, I'm not here to stir the pot with the PMTT or anything.
No, they're all great people. I like I said, I mean, I'm novice, but I'd like to think that the self-policing and all that shit is, I mean, it for the most part on the bodies of water we're fishing, a lot of times you're in areas of other boats and stuff. So, I don't know. And to be and to I guess it's different with, I guess trail teams and us being younger on the trail and not having like years of experience on it. But everyone we've met, trail teams and just people, everyone's been really cool. And it's kind of a fun community of like the trail teams. And seems like there's been a lot of people that have been doing it for a long time. And there's definitely a level of just like respect there for it. So,
It always surprises me how many boats, how many people fish it. Like that, I mean, these are not small events.
Yeah, no. It feels big when you're doing them for sure. I mean, it's everyone that's there seems to really freaking know what's going on, and it's there's a lot of good fishermen in them, and it's cool to kind of. I mean, I think the most fun I've had during them, obviously catching the fish is a blast, but like the amount of shit that you just learn from talking with either people you're staying with or people that you meet at the bar, and it's everyone we've talked to has been really nice about. Obviously, they're not voluntarily giving up,
right,
everything, but like just kind of through chit chat here and there, like you can pick up on a few things, and I mean, we've learned stuff on every single stop we've been to, and everyone's doing something a little different, it seems like. So that's been my biggest thing. That's been awesome, is just learning from other really good fishermen and kind of seeing how they go about stuff. Because when you got a finite amount of time to go out and try to find fish, like it really makes you work hard. You're not just out there shooting the shit with your buddies. It's
I can't imagine. And it's a lot of an investment too. That's not like a small. It's not. I can go and fish on a Saturday in my local tournament, and who gives a shit? What's it cost me? Whatever my registration fee is and the gas to tow my boat there. You guys are getting hotel rooms and traveling halfway, across the Midwest for some of these tournaments. I mean, that's a pretty big investment for you guys. I mean, did you guys take on any sponsors or anything like that?
No, not yet. It's all been our own cash, our own investment into it. Obviously we're lucky with our outcome so far.
Yeah.
We've pretty much come out even, I'd say. I think you really got to.
I think people forget how much overhead there is in stuff like this.
Yeah, I think if you have to make it all worth it, you probably got to take top 3. There's like an exponential advance in earnings past 3, and it's like second and first. Are really getting the big ones.
That's cool.
All right, well, let's put some finishing touches on this one, because this has been a lot of fun. I think we're running at about, I don't know, hour and a half. Anything else you guys got? A few final thoughts that we can chat about here?
Totally up to you guys.
Owen, what do you guys have in store for this spring with the Hunks weekend? Are you guys doing that again, or doing some big thing at all?
Yeah, actually, we this year we're going to be having some Canadian guys come down. I think
Nice.
We have, I believe Greg from Leela Lures is coming down. Possibly Bucko from Bucko's Branded Baits. These are all guys that kind of we've had on the podcast recently, and we hung out with up in New York. And it's like you guys are talking about, the PMTT kind of create a community. That's kind of what we're hoping to create here with some of these other bait makers and people in the industry, because we don't have PMTTs and things like that here. We I think the PMTT came to Chautauqua once years ago, and that was the last time because it was I just think way too far east for everybody.
Mhm.
So yeah, so we're definitely gonna have some invites out. People come down and fish for a couple of days and just shoot the shit, have fun, and it's not a competition. I hate the whole competition aspect of musky fishing. Like if it's not a tournament, just come down and hang out and fish. We like to kind of hop in different people's boats, fish with different people, and just kind of have a good time. I mean, I'm always jealous when you guys have your bender weekends. Living
Sounds
vicariously
similar.
through you guys. It's kind of what this is for us. It's as
Oh
close as
yeah.
we get to a bender weekend.
Oh, they're fun. That's the dream right there. Just shoot the shit and hopefully put a few fish in the net. That's a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you guys are welcome anytime you guys want to make the trip in here in the spring.
When do you do it?
Anytime. This year it's going to be for like first weekend in May, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we got Ryan Elizondo is going to fly in from Washington for it. We got a couple of,
Nice.
like I said, a couple people coming down from Canada. Brady's going to come and fish it, I think. So
Nice.
really looking forward to it. It's going to be a good time.
Awesome. Well, look, we can't thank you enough for making this work, and I know you're battling some sickness in the household.
I'm glad we
yourself.
got through
It's
it, boys.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. So we're really appreciative of your time, and again, can't thank you enough for having us on your podcast back when we first started. That was awesome. So
Well, guys, I enjoy listening to your stuff, and I'm always rooting for you. I wish you guys the best of luck coming up in this season, PMTT. I'm gonna try to send you guys some baits to maybe use this year, see what you think of them, and give me your honest opinion on. Oh, one of the things I wanted to ask you guys is the single hook on the spinner baits. Have you ever
Mhm.
did you want a treble hook on that?
Ooh. I think in cases we could use it if we're not using, say, the spinnerbait in some sort of like heavy cabbage area, for example, I guess over
Vermilion.
like shallow rocks or vermilion, if we're not targeting weeds so much. The pike.
Yeah, because maybe I'll send you a couple with big trebles on it as opposed to the big, because that's like a gigantic tuna hook I use. That and some people, I don't know, some people just look at it and think it's a single hook, so they don't have a lot of confidence in it.
Sure.
Whereas, I mean, I've always had success with it, but
Yeah.
But in that case
was.
with the oh, sorry, Max. You can go.
Oh, I was just saying, I like the single hook because it feels like when you get them pinned, they stay pinned. And the only reason why I missed that fish at Vermilion was just pure user error. I mean, it had nothing to do. I think even if it would have been a treble hook setup, I don't think it would have changed it much. I mean, maybe, but
you
yeah, I
just
don't
didn't get
know.
the hook set, or
Yeah, it just yeah, it just yeah.
I
hard to even remember
don't want to bring
back
back I don't
now.
want to bring
No,
back bad memories.
no, I've thought about it just a few times since then. Yeah, I think it was just well, so I mean, again, and I was gonna touch on this when we were talking about it, and we don't need to prolong this too much, but what I loved about the bait was the fact that like I could burn it super fast over super shallow rocks. And because of the weight, I don't know if it was because of the weight or what, but it just felt like it was grinding, making so much noise down there. And it was coming in, and like I said, I could just burn it. And I was reeling it almost as fast as I possibly could over the shallow rock bar. And I was at times would kind of tick off rocks, and I'd kind of feel it. And then all of a sudden, like when that fish ate, it just kind of felt like it was just a little bit more dead weight. And I think what happened was the fish just came up behind it and pretty much clamped on and was, almost
Knocks it
swimming with
forward
it.
almost.
And I kind of I had the rod tip up a little higher because I was trying to keep the bait up. And so I kind of was almost just like giving it a little like, hey, get off that rock or whatever I'm snagged on. And literally like it computed in my head too late is like, as I was doing that, I realized it was a fish. And then I set it. And as I set it, I just saw the fish go broadside and the bait just fell out. So I set the way that the fish's mouth was. And I mean, I think it was just literally a bad,
Bad timing.
Bad timing.
Yeah.
So
That happens, man. Well,
yeah.
hopefully you'll keep throwing them next year.
Oh, for sure. I'm
I want
already
to try
excited.
trolling them.
I'm pumped to troll them. I
Yeah.
got a few different lakes I'm very excited to try
I
that
think
on
it'll
next year.
definitely come in handy for sure, especially when some of them start to dirty up or those weed edges get a little, higher up, like you're talking about, like that 2 foot kill zone that you can kind of blaze through. Say you
Yeah.
might, I could just see how that's effective. Like you might, you could
Hell
go
yeah.
really fast, almost to a speed where you can't even reel that fast. So like you're potentially going after fish that no one else around here is going to do that. I can guarantee you that.
Right.
And the other thing I was
When
going to
is the
touch on with
Wasau? When's the Wasau Expo?
that one is March. Let me get a calendar up so I can get the exact dates. That one
'Cause if it's
is
after Muskie
March.
Max, I might.
Yep.
I'll give Brady some baits to take out there and give to you
Muskie
guys.
Max is, you said, 2nd and 3rd. The next weekend,
Yep.
8th, 9th, 10th is Minneapolis. And then Wausau is 15th, 16th, 17th. So the
Okay,
third
cool.
weekend of March. So,
All right.
yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I'd love to tinker around with those again. And
Cool.
I think a good thing about the treble hooks is that you'd have a way that if you have to cut hooks, you can replace it too, right? Like the bait's not KO'd.
It's actually, you can replace the tuna hook too. I can
Yeah,
give
that's
you.
what I remember, I think.
All you got to do is cut off and really you could take the single hook off and put a treble on. You just
Oh,
take
yeah.
remove the shrink tube. Now be careful because that
Dang.
shrink tube is like crazy. It's like crazy shrink tube. I've had multiple people hurt themselves trying to remove it.
Oh boy. All right. That's good
Like
warning.
with like an X-Acto knife or like a knife and it slips
Sure.
and they're, yeah. So
Oh, that's already
Yeah.
giving me some heebie-jeebies of my beginning bucktail making of cutting areas of my hand. So,
oh yeah.
because I do all the twists by hand, I don't have a machine do that. Or a
Oh yeah, that
contraption.
sucks.
Yeah. Bruises and
Well, boys, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you very much for having me. Like I said, this is definitely, I've never been a guest. I don't believe so. So I will always remember this.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. Feel
Yeah.
better soon. Your whole family.
You guys too.
Thanks.
All right,
appreciate
boys.
it.
So, and
Good luck this year.
All right.
You too.
Thank you.
Take care.
See ya.
all right, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot thank Owen enough for coming on the podcast tonight and sharing his time with us to chat muskies. It's really great of him to come on and chat about his baits, the Big O's Bucktails, touch on a little bit with the Muskie Hunks podcast, which is a podcast that us three really adore and have been listening to for a while. They do a great job over there, and it's I really think it's good to get some perspective from the eastern side. Sometimes you can just kind of put the guards on, the goggles on, so to speak, and kind of forget about the muskies out east. There's tons of them over there, and a lot of fishermen over there as well. So really great to get him on and chit chat on that, and as well as some Canadian stuff. But from that, you guys, what did you guys learn tonight on tonight's podcast? Let's go first.
Yeah, I always enjoy hearing Owen talk, and was very thankful that he was able to make some time in his busy schedule to come on tonight and chat with us. More or less, I think for me, I just want to give a shout out to all the hunks. It's nice just to have Owen on, but man, it would be fun to do a full Muskies on Tap and Muskie Hunks collab one of these days, and just get all on and chop some shop. So yeah, main takeaway, it's cool to kind of hear how he got into building his bucktails and how he makes them, and how he likes to kind of do them a little bit differently, and very cool to hear about his Nipissing adventures and how he's kind of stuck to that lake as kind of his 1 weekend, 1 week getaway. But yeah, no, it's always good to chat with him, and looking forward to fishing, some of those spinner baits, trolling them and continuing to kind of use them in different scenarios. So yeah, that'd probably be my biggest takeaway. Brian?
Yeah, I was very intrigued with his Nipissing adventures. I kind of always thought of Canada as the stuff north of Minnesota, so it's cool to kind of get his perspective on that side of the Canadian muskie scene. But also, like you were saying, we kind of get caught up in the Wisconsin muskie stuff, Minnesota muskie stuff. We don't really think too much about the East Coast people. But they do muskie fishing a totally different way out there. They do, like he said, primarily trolling. They have a ton of different, small batch bait makers who make hard baits, trolling baits. The one that stuck out to me was the meatball bait we had talked
Meatball.
about.
Yeah,
We got to get
meatball.
our
I
hands
feel-
on one of those.
yeah, get a
Like,
meatball in our hands. And I mean, a lot of those baits out there, I'm sure majority of people in Wisconsin haven't seen or heard of, and I'm sure they would produce well here. So it makes you think, maybe take a little page out of the East Coast Easterners playbook and see if it translates to our Northern Wisco fish.
Yeah. All right,
I
Gus.
think, yeah, I think I really agree there. That would be sweet to, just as people always talk about trying to find like a different, like a bucktail that grinds a little bit differently. I mean, the same could be said for a crankbait. It's probably more beneficial to go with one that's handmade from a different state that people would have a hard time getting over here. There's no, there's a very, very small chance with the amount of lakes we got over here that a fish has even seen it. So that is definitely something that I, took away, is that they just have so many small bait makers, mainly rely on, crankbaits, shad style crankbaits, just the whole style of trolling that they do, little things that I've tried to replicate here. And I think there's, just as anything, a muskie's a muskie. And there's a time and place for everything. I think that speed trolling with the spinnerbait, or speed trolling, short line trolling, all that stuff could be used here. So I'm, that's my, I think it's kind of taken or stealing a little bit of yours, Max, with the spinnerbait. But that's like the biggest thing that I got from it for sure, that I want to for sure try early and late and middle of the season, just anything to try something new, just
For
anything
sure.
to catch these muskies in a different way, stand out and find a new bite. That's the whole fun of it. I don't want to just go fish the same spot, same way, expect different results, and try some wacky stuff. It's how we find some of these wacky bites that we've been on, that almost like half don't make sense or are like weird if you think about it, but it's cool. It's cool stuff.
Oh, show. All right. Well, I think we gave it our best effort for playing injured tonight. This podcasting game just ain't no joke sometimes. Got to roll up the sleeves and go to work. You know how it is, Brian. So,
Yeah. You get a little down and dirty sometimes.
yeah.
It's just that rise and grind life. Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
Hey, ain't that facts?
Yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm about to hit the put a head to pillow here pretty shortly. So
I think before, sorry, Max, to cut you off, but I was gonna say, before anybody quick presses the pause button here on this podcast, because it's the end, quick plug the socials, and then Brian take us away here in a second. So if you guys could give us a follow at Muskies on Tap on Instagram, that would mean a ton to us. We're going to be pumping out some content, other than just posting that we have a podcast up. We just put out our second bait of the week. We'll do that every Monday, and we just did the crane bait. Shout out Bill Crane.
Shut up.
And we'll have another one each week for that. And also, my guide page is Suggs Fishing on Instagram and Suggs Fishing Guide Service on Facebook. If you give that a follow, that'd be great. Guidebooks are open for 2024. Give me a shout on any of those. You can find my website and the merch, the available merch on there as well. www.suggsfishing.com. And with that, Brian, let's give
real
the
quick,
folks
what
you got.
Don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button either. Maybe like, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe. Really pump those numbers up. Don't be afraid. Leave us a review.
Yeah, give us a
Hate it,
follow.
love it, whatever. Yeah, tell a friend, another musky fisherman, or not. Maybe this is the podcast that. Actually, it probably.
Oh,
Oh,
Whoa, wait,
going
what's
on
that?
here?
We got technical difficulties here, Brian. Your Wi-Fi just took a dump.
Oh, right when his moment is to shine. There he
Oh,
is.
there he is. There he's not.
Yeah, I didn't hear that last sentence.
Oh, you're good. Take us
Yeah,
away,
we-
Brian. Yeah, take us away, Brian.
Just take us away,
Hello?
dog.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to this episode. Shout out to Owen for coming on tonight. What a performance by him. What a bucktail he makes. And spinnerbait. Be sure to check those out. Guys, the weekend is upon us for the last weekend of football for the year. Who do we got for?
Oh,
I got 49ers, 9-9, Niner gang, baby.
Niner
Down
gang
with Taylor
too.
Swift. Down with Taylor Swift. I'm done
Down
with
with
it.
her.
I'm done with
All
it. I'm over it.
right, I'm gonna go with 31-23 Niners. Lock that in for final score, guaranteed lock. Have a good weekend, everybody.
27-14.
He's a liberal spy plant.